Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom, and in this video we're going to continue with the Last Apprentice series. If you do not know what I'm talking about, please go back to the beginning of the playlist for Joseph Delaney's The Last Apprentice series, or for the British, the Wardstone Chronicles. Periodically also call it the Spooks because that's how the books are titled. So in this one, we're going to be looking at, where are we here? I think this is 8. Nope, 10. All right, so we're at book 10. So for the American audience, this is The Last Apprentice Lure of the Dead. For the British audience, this is the Spook's Blood. Apple name for it. So in this book, we come back to Tom Ward, and they're having their house rebuilt. The Spook is kind of quiet. He realizes he's getting old. The rest of this book plays that out like crazy. And essentially, Alice had disappeared. She comes back. They get a message that there's some woman selling off books from her library in this town, and they're planning on going there because the Spook wants to rebuild his library that was burned because of war. But Alice has come back because she went off with where she went in the Grimkin, and she tells Tom what the Grimkin told her, which is they've gotten information from the Lima witches that his mother left behind to guard things, that they have until Halloween, and that there's information that he needs to get in those trunks. So he, instead of going to this town, he goes back there. He does end up speaking to his mother. She gives him, basically, they give him a small sword. This is one of 3 objects, basically blades, that he needs to defeat the fiend. The first he already has, which is the Sword of Destiny that he got from Cuchulainn in the earlier book. This is a blade. The other one is a knife that's hidden in the dark and basically under the seat of the fiend. So pretty much somebody has to go in there, which instantly implies that it's Alice. She has to go back and she has to get this blade. Then his mother explains what he has to do, which is very, very gruesome. These books get really, really dark. Essentially, he has to kill Alice. They have to build a very, very powerful fire. He has to cut off. She has to be willing. She has to cut off her thumbs, throw them into the fire, and then cut out her heart, throw it into the fire. I don't know if he has to throw her into the fire, but that is pretty much how they destroy the fiend. So he's not particularly happy about that. Nor is he particularly happy about asking Alice to go back into the dark, which he does eventually tell her that's what he has to do. They have to do it by Halloween, because again, anniversaries here. So essentially, yeah, things get interesting. That is the only real important part of this story. And then they go into issues, which I will talk about in the end, why on earth I'm offended by some of this. So he goes back, they go to this village. They're brought there by a former apprentice of the Spooks. Turns out he'd been in Romania, and these are vampires and monstrous creatures. The females inhibit bodies, they suck blood, they eventually take Gregory and put him in a pit. They had this other spook whose name, who is it? It's been a couple days since I read this. If I can find what his name is. Alright, it's skipping my mind here. It's in the back of the book. Pull up his name here, because Tom is kind of pissed off at him because this guy sells them to he brings them here. So he's kind of pissed off. So let's see if I can find his name at the end. Let's see, where is it? Judd Brinskull is the name of this guy. So that's his name. So obviously Tom is pissed off. He eventually rescues Judd and his master, but they can't get a hold of these, basically destroy these bloodsuckers, and that's really where this story revolves around. trying to destroy these bloodsuckers, trying to prevent them from bringing back their god. It's pretty nasty. Lots and lots of blood. That's the reason the British copy, which probably would have been a better title. Hi, Kendra. Kendra's deciding to join me. Hi, Lab Cat. It's called Blood in the British version, which is probably a better description of what this is, because there's blood, 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 blood. If you're squeamish, you really should not be writing this recipe or reading this book series. Sorry, cat in my lap, licking herself, being slightly crazy. Kendra. And evidence of calico. All right, back to the book. So they have to figure out how to destroy them. He's able to rescue both Judd and eventually his master, who basically they did an illusion where both Tom and his master believed that his master's head was cut off and it was stuck in a box. Even though it wasn't. It was an illusion. But his master, who was stuck in that pit, was stuck in a pit and being sucked on by these creatures, believed it as well. So, and he does eventually tell Tom that. I don't know if Alice is not with him. Alice is off doing something else. He eventually calls her for help. They eventually get back to their home. The reason Judd was drawn into this because he fell in love with a girl who was eventually taken over by one of these monsters. And she shows, basically, it's her body with this monster shows up. He destroys it, buries it, eventually comes back because they're bringing back their god. And he destroys it filled with blood. The Grimkin comes to help. They're trying to, basically these Romanian witches and these bloodsuckers are trying to summon their god. A lot of rituals, a lot of blood going on, a lot of chasing around with the dead, a lot of dealing with the fiend, because again, they still have his head. And there are issues, and of course these monsters want his head because they're siding with the fiend. They're trying to bring back their old god. Various things happen. Tom has to go in to go after it. He thinks he's failed because he can't seem to slow time and it's dealing with a god. Eventually he thinks he loses, though his mother had come to him because she's, again, immortal being. She's not exactly dead. And told him basically he will succeed and he is the one who has to do it. He thinks he's failed. Turns out his blood is poison to this thing, and he literally killed a god on accident because it tried to suck his blood. And you have the blood of a seventh son combined with the first Limo witches. So apparently that's really, really deadly to this god. So he actually, by trying to suck his blood, died. Which essentially is very, very strange. Apparently a whole lot of horrible things happened. So they made a big problem with the fiend. You literally destroyed a dark god again on accident, and he was out for like 3 weeks, or for like about 3 days. He was unconscious. They get back. Alice Grimkin tells Tom, it's like she's left. She's gone into the dark to get this dagger, and yes, she knows you have to kill her. She's very much aware. We're going to try to find a better way because Tom doesn't think he can do it. But the Grimkin said it's like his mother told her. It's like, this is what has to be done to destroy the fiend. Is Tom has to do this. So she's already agreed to it. It's like, we can't find another way. Yeah, you have to cut off my thumbs and throw them into the fire. I have to be willing and not be scared. And then you have to cut out my heart. Tom still doesn't think he can do it. And that's essentially the gist of this book. Obviously, there's quite a few details. I read this a little bit better than the Grimkin, but it was a couple days ago. So, and it's just very, very dark. I'm reading these book series in tandem now with the Princess Diaries because I need something lighter and fluffier. And yes, I will review those. The Princess Diaries are coming come January. Because I need some light fluff. And the Princess Diaries cover that, as opposed to this, which is very, very, very dark and very gruesome. Very good series, but again, very dark, very gruesome. So I always say this in a lot of these videos. If you don't like the dark and the gruesome, do not go anywhere near this book series. Just don't. This is for kids who really like the dark. My cat is going crazy. All right. So why do I take issue with this? Well, something about me. I find it insulting that they must imply Romanians and vampires. Why? Particularly Transylvania and vampires. Transylvania is beautiful. Cats. Kendra. Speaking of Romanians, that'd be the cat. So, yes, my cat is in fact Romanian. I was a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer. I lived in Transylvania for 2 years. So I have been here. I've actually never been to the Carpathian Mountains. I think I've been to some of them. I've been to the Transylvanian Alps. They were south of me. So yes, Transylvania is not a giant mountainous region. The Transylvanian Alps, if you want to look at Romania, you have the Carpathians that go north-south, and then you have the Transylvanian Alps, which go east-west, and basically create a weird little curved, almost like a curved L in the middle of Romania. There's a large grouping of kind of weird mountain outcrops in the middle. That's where I was. So, again, I was not in either one of these mountains. I was, in fact, however, in Transylvania. It is very beautiful. It is a very, very poor country. They do not like vampires. This is all Bram Stoker's fault. And yes, if you want to see, I have, in fact, reviewed Dracula. That was last October. So, check out that video. But yes, I find it insulting that he has to bring in vampires and imply that they're from Transylvania and they're Romanian. Because it's insulting to the people. It's like, no. It's a gorgeous country. They're not evil. They're not really witches in there. They're gypsies, but they're gypsies all over Europe. They're not unique to Romania. They're not loved throughout all of Europe. But yes, that is my issue with this book series. Romania is a gorgeous country. I enjoyed my time there to an extent. Obviously, I have some Peace Corps has issues. I may tell those tales one day, nor was I particularly trained or well equipped for what I was doing in Romania. But again, it is a very beautiful country. It has some decent, good human beings there. They're not vampires. They're not evil. And they're certainly not bloodsuckers. So, yes, I take offense to that. My other issue, and this is coming from looking at kind of the rest of the series, is the next book, Slither. I'm not sure how it ties in because it's talking about another creature. So, and then that's followed by a book specifically on Alice. And then he finally wraps it up in The Seventh Son. So he seems to be doing some minor filler stuff here, either extending the story or he doesn't have a full story on Tom and he still has some information to surpass. For instance, in this story, we learn about Mom, his blood being poison. I will release that cat when we're done with this video, and a little bit more information about what's going on with Alice. But this story in its whole has very little to do with the destruction of the Fiend. So we will see what happens with the next book, which is Slither. On my end, it is on hold at the library, so I am waiting on it. And the British version of that one is Slither's Tale. And then the next book in English, or American, British side's I Am Alice. It's just Alice in the final tale. So that is it for this review. If you like what you see, I'm sure you've watched the rest of these reviews. Please check out the rest of my channel. Like and subscribe. Most of my stuff is much, much lighter than this. Most of it. We do some darker educational stuff. But horror is not something I'm going to cover all that much because I'm not particularly fond of it, but we will see going forward. But again, like and subscribe. Check out what I've got. By the time you view this video, I will have a decent sized library. And I have a whole heck of a lot more to come. So, thank you.